The sun burned gold over the Pacific, stretching its reflection across the steel-blue waves that lapped gently against the docks of the naval amphibious base Coronado. The morning air was thick with salt and the faint echo of distant chopper blades, a familiar sound to anyone who had ever stood on this sacred ground of the elite. Lieutenant Samantha Sam Porter adjusted her cap as she stepped off the transport van, her boots crunching against the asphalt. Her uniform was crisp, her movements precise, but her pulse thudded with quiet thunder beneath the surface. The base was alive with energy, SEALs running drills, voices barking orders, and the rhythmic slap of combat boots against the earth. This was no ordinary military installation. This was where warriors were forged. And today, one of those warriors was her. Yet as she walked toward the administrative building, she could feel the eyes, dozens of them. Curious, doubtful, some openly hostile. Conversations halted mid-sentence, and laughter dimmed. Men who had survived Hell Week, who had jumped from planes and swum through midnight waters, now simply stared. The first woman to ever officially complete SEAL training. The headline that shook the military world for months. To them, she wasn't a teammate. She was a statement. A symbol. A test case in human form. Sam knew the whispers. Publicity stunt. She must have had help. No way she passed the drown-proofing legit. She ignored them all. She had learned long ago that silence was her greatest weapon. It unnerved people. It made them underestimate her, right up until the moment they realized too late that she didn't break. As she approached the check-in office, the guard at the door, a young petty officer with a lopsided grin, snapped a half-hearted salute. "Lieutenant Porter," he said, scanning her ID card. Didn't expect to see the legend in person. Sam forced a polite nod. "Just another SEAL officer." He chuckled under his breath. "We'll see about that." Inside, Commander Blake Harris was waiting. Tall, broad-shouldered, with silver hair, and a gaze sharp enough to cut glass, he was a man who had seen too much and forgotten little. He didn't rise when she entered. Instead, he gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Lieutenant Porter," he began, his tone neutral but weighted. "Congratulations on completing your training. That's a hell of a thing." "Thank you, sir," she replied. Her voice was even, disciplined, measured, the way she'd trained it to be. He studied her for a long moment, his fingers tapping against a folder labeled with her name. "You've made history, whether you like it or not. But history doesn't blend easily into teams like mine. You'll be assigned to SEAL Team 5, Bravo Platoon." Her breath caught slightly. Team 5 was no joke, a high-tempo unit specializing in maritime reconnaissance and direct action missions. They were tight-knit, ruthless, and famous for pushing even seasoned operators to their limits. "Yes, sir," she said, hiding the flicker of nerves. Harris leaned back. "Look, Porter, I read your record. Impressive. You've got the scores, the endurance, the grit. But what you're walking into isn't just a job. It's a brotherhood that's been around longer than most of us have been breathing. They don't take easily to outsiders, and right now, that's what you are." "I understand, Commander," Sam said, her jaw tightening slightly. "I'm not here for their approval. I'm here to serve." He almost smiled. Almost. Good. You'll need that attitude. Dismissed. The barracks were a blur of voices and motion when she entered later that afternoon. Men lounged in their bunks, cleaning weapons, lacing boots, swapping jokes. The noise dulled as she walked in, her duffel over her shoulder. Conversations turned into murmurs. Someone muttered, "You've got to be kidding me," followed by a low whistle from the corner. She kept her eyes straight ahead, walking to the only empty bunk at the far end. She set her bag down quietly, methodically unpacking, folding her uniforms, placing her PT shoes beneath the bed, aligning her gear with the precision drilled into her over years of service. A voice broke through the silence. Didn't know they were letting journalists live with us now. Laughter rippled through the room. She turned slightly. Petty Officer Ryan Cole. Tall, muscular, his confidence reeked of arrogance. The type who'd seen combat and believed it made him untouchable. Sam didn't answer. She didn't even glance at him. Cole smirked. Guess the Navy's really running out of men. Another burst of laughter. Sam's hands stilled for a brief second, then resumed folding her gear. She wasn't here to win a popularity contest. She'd faced far worse than playground taunts. She remembered freezing water, lungs screaming as instructors held her underwater during ground proofing. She remembered crawling through mud with 50-pound packs cutting into her shoulders. And she remembered the faint smile on her father's face when she told him her dream before his final salute under a folded flag. Dinner that night was quiet. She took her tray and sat alone at a corner table in the mess hall. Around her, the air buzzed with low conversation and the metallic clatter of cutlery. Men talked about deployments, weekend plans, and who could outdrink who. Occasionally, a laugh erupted, short, sharp, like static. She didn't mind being alone. Isolation was familiar. But beneath that calm exterior, she was assessing everything. Faces, body language, escape routes. It was instinct now. Years of discipline had wired her brain to always read the room. As she lifted her fork, she caught sight of a reflection in the window. Cole again, sitting with a few others, glancing her way and smirking. His voice carried across the hall, just loud enough to sting. Bet she brought her makeup to the field. More laughter. She probably thinks Hell Week was a reality show. Her stomach turned, but her face didn't move. What they didn't know was that Hell Week had nearly killed her, twice. And she had finished it with blood in her shoes and salt in her lungs. They didn't know about the night she hallucinated her father, standing at the shoreline, whispering, "Don't stop now." She didn't owe them her story. She took another bite of her food, each movement calm, mechanical. As the evening wound down, she left the mess hall and stepped outside into the cool night air. The sea breeze carried the faint scent of diesel and salt water. Lights from the dock shimmered across the surface of the bay. She stood there for a moment, hands clasped behind her back, staring at the horizon. She had made it, but the real battle had just begun. A distant voice called her name, Commander Harris, standing on the walkway. "You handled yourself well today," he said, stepping beside her. "Thank you, sir." He studied her expression. "Ignore them. They'll test you. Every look, every word. Don't give them what they want." "I won't," she said. He nodded once. "Good, because sooner or later they'll see. You don't belong here because you're a woman. You belong because you earned it." Sam looked back at the glowing horizon. "Yes, sir." The wind picked up, tossing strands of hair across her face. Somewhere in the distance, a helicopter rose into the sky, its blades thundering through the fading light. Tomorrow would be another day, another test. And if they thought she was weak, they'd soon learn what her silence was made of. The morning sun had barely crept over the horizon when the alarm sounded across the base. The air was crisp, and the sea breeze carried the faint metallic taste of salt and fuel. Lieutenant Samantha Sam Porter laced her boots and stepped out into the courtyard. The rhythmic cadence of early PT already echoed through the compound. Push-ups, sit-ups, shouting voices, and sand grinding into sweat. Her team, SEAL Team 5 Bravo Platoon, stood in formation, lined like steel rods under pressure. Commander Blake Harris moved down the line with a clipboard in hand, calling out names, checking attendance, and gauging readiness. When he reached Sam, his gaze was steady but unreadable. "Lieutenant Porter," he said, voice crisp. "Welcome to your first official day with Bravo Platoon." "Yes, sir," she replied firmly. Harris nodded. "You'll be partnered with Cole today." The words hung in the air like a grenade pin pulled free. A few smirks appeared among the men. Ryan Cole, the same man who'd mocked her on her first night, crossed his arms and exhaled sharply through his nose. "Sir, permission to request alternate pairing," Cole said flatly. "Denied," Harris replied without hesitation. "You two are on a 2-mile amphibious swim and 1-hour land navigation exercise. Let's see how well you two can cooperate under pressure." Cole's jaw flexed, but he saluted. "Aye, sir?" Sam simply nodded. No protest. No reaction. Minutes later, the two of them stood at the edge of the cold Pacific, wetsuits half-zipped, fins in hand. The ocean stretched before them, vast and indifferent. Waves slapped the shore like a challenge. Cole smirked. "Try not to drown, Lieutenant." Sam met his gaze. "Try to keep up, Petty Officer." Without waiting, she dove in, slicing through the icy water like a blade through silk. The cold bit into her skin instantly, but she didn't fight it. She used it, controlled her breathing, counted her strokes. The rhythm of endurance had been drilled into her for years. Behind her, Cole thrashed and cursed as the current pulled at him. He was strong but sloppy. He relied on power, not precision. Sam, however, was all control. When they reached the halfway buoy, he was 20 meters behind. When they returned to shore, she'd already stripped her fins and was waiting, arms crossed. Cole stumbled up, dripping and panting. "You cut corners?" She shook her head. "You zigzagged. You let the current play you. You fought the ocean instead of working with it." He glared at her and turned away in silence. Later that afternoon, the unit gathered on the obstacle course, the gauntlet, as they called it, a brutal stretch of mud, wire, and wood designed to break even the toughest operators. Harris stood by the edge with his stopwatch. "All right, Bravo Platoon. 2 at a time. You fail. You repeat until you don't." Cole's name came up again. So did Sam's. Cole grinned, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Guess we're stuck together again." Sam adjusted her gloves. "Guess so." The whistle blew. They sprinted forward, vaulting over barriers, sliding under wire, climbing the rope tower. The men watching cheered, jeered, and shouted. Mud clung to her boots, grit filled her gloves, but she didn't slow down. Every motion was methodical, no wasted movement. Cole tried to outpace her, but halfway through, he slipped on the slick wood bridge and crashed into the mud. Sam didn't stop. She reached the finish line seconds later, chest heaving, heart pounding, while Cole was still climbing out of the muck. When he finished, gasping, Harris blew the whistle. Time: Porter, 8 minutes 35. Cole, 9:47. A few laughs erupted in the crowd. Cole's face burned red. Harris said nothing, just wrote the numbers down. Sam turned to Cole, her voice low but calm. "You've got potential," she said, "but arrogance slows you down." He stared at her, stunned by the lack of mockery in her tone. Then he barked a bitter laugh. "Save the pep talks, Lieutenant. You're not my CO." "No," she said, walking away, "but I might be the reason you survive someday." That night, the barracks felt colder. Cole sat on his bunk, stewing, while the others swapped stories of deployments and glory. The conversation shifted naturally to her, the new girl, as they still called her. "Did you see her pace?" "Freaking robot," one said. "She burn out," another added. No woman lasts long in the field. Cole stayed quiet, staring at his boots. In her own corner, Sam silently cleaned her weapon. The metallic clicks were almost rhythmic. Her body ached from training, but she refused to show it. Pain, like doubt, was a weakness best kept private. Harris walked through the barracks once, his boots thudding against the floor. His gaze landed briefly on Sam before moving on. He knew she'd done well today. But he also knew the battle she faced wasn't about speed or strength. It was about acceptance. And that battle would be harder than any mission. By the third week, the team's hostility had turned from open mockery to quiet exclusion. During planning sessions, they avoided her suggestions. During drills, they partnered among themselves, leaving her as the odd one out. Even the instructors, though professional, seemed cautious around her, unsure whether to treat her as one of their own or a headline in waiting. One afternoon, Harris called her into his office. She saluted crisply. "At ease, Porter," he said, leaning back in his chair. "How are you holding up?" "Fine, sir," she said evenly. He raised an eyebrow. "I read the after-action reports. You're outperforming half the platoon. But you're still isolated." "Why?" She hesitated. "Because they don't know me yet, sir." "Then show them," Harris said. "You've earned your spot here. Now prove it." She nodded. "Yes, sir." As she turned to leave, he added, "And Porter, not by talking. By doing. They'll respect that." That night, in the mess hall, she sat alone again. The smell of coffee and powdered eggs filled the air, mixing with the low hum of conversation. The laughter at the far tables was louder than usual, and it centered around one group. Cole sat at the middle, telling stories of missions past, his voice booming. Every few lines ended with laughter and slaps on the back. He was confident again, back in his comfort zone. Then, as Sam stood to leave, she heard it, a sharp, mocking whistle from their table. "Leaving already, Porter?" One of them called. Cole grinned. "She's got to get her beauty sleep before training." Laughter erupted. Sam paused mid-step, but didn't turn. Her eyes focused on the door ahead. She could feel the heat of humiliation crawling up her neck, but she refused to show it. Instead, she steadied her breath and kept walking. The door swung shut behind her, cutting off the laughter like a blade. Outside, the air was cool and still. She walked down toward the docks, where the ocean glimmered under the moonlight. For a long time, she just stood there, watching the tide roll in, her reflection shimmering across the dark water. She remembered her father's voice again. "Strength isn't about how loud you shout, Sam. It's about what you do when no one's watching." She clenched her fists, feeling the rough seams of her gloves. No one was watching now. No one believed yet. But they would. Somewhere deep inside, beneath the fatigue and the pain, something hardened, a resolve that went beyond pride. She didn't come here to fit in. She came to lead, to fight, to serve. And when the time came, she would show them what a real SEAL looked like. The day had been long, the kind that burned the muscles and tested the mind. The platoon had returned from a 12-hour endurance march through the coastal dunes, 30-pound packs, full gear and no brakes. Sand clung to every inch of skin. The sun had beaten mercilessly, and even the toughest of them looked half dead. By the time evening rolled around, the mess hall was alive with noise, the clatter of trays, bursts of laughter, and the heavy smell of sweat and protein. The kind of night when men relaxed, released their tension, and found humor in anything or anyone. Lieutenant Samantha Sam Porter entered quietly, her shoulders straight, her eyes sharp despite exhaustion. She took her tray and moved to a corner table, as always. Alone. She preferred it that way, not because she wanted to be, but because she had no other choice. Her every move drew subtle glances. Not out of admiration, curiosity mixed with something darker. Discomfort. At the far end of the hall, Petty Officer Ryan Cole sat surrounded by his closest teammates. His laughter boomed across the room, loud and confident. His voice was the type that filled a space, arrogant, commanding, impossible to ignore. "She's fast, sure," he said between bites of mashed potatoes. "But fast doesn't mean SEAL ready. Hell, half the guys in Bud S could outlast her. I saw her hesitating today when we breached that wall. Did you see that? Thought she was gonna freeze." A few of the men laughed, shaking their heads. "Maybe she's saving her energy for makeup drills," one said. Another snorted. "Don't worry, Cole. Maybe she'll knit you a sweater for Christmas." The table erupted in laughter. Sam heard it. She didn't need to. She'd learned to read tones, feel intentions. The mocking rhythm of male laughter, sharp and deliberate, pierced through the hall. She didn't look up, didn't react. She just ate slowly, one measured bite at a time. Cole's voice rose again, almost theatrically now. "Hey, maybe we should start a new motto. The few, the proud, the pretty. What do you think, boys?" The laughter came harder this time. Sam's fork froze halfway to her mouth. For the first time, her composure trembled at the edge, not with anger, but with something more dangerous, resolve. She lowered the fork slowly and set it down. Her pulse didn't rise. Her breathing stayed steady. She had been through worse, far worse. She remembered instructors shouting in her face, trying to break her will during Hell Week. She remembered blacking out underwater during drown proofing and waking up and begging to try again. This was noise. She could silence noise. Across the room, Cole caught her glance, just a flicker, a flash of her dark eyes. It was enough to ignite him further. He stood, grinning. "Hey, Lieutenant," he called out, loud enough to draw every eye in the room. "You look lonely over there. Come join us. Or do you only eat with the press?" The laughter this time wasn't cruel. It was cautious. Some of the men didn't laugh. They'd seen her train. They'd seen her endurance. But no one stopped him either. Sam didn't move. She just looked at him. Cole took a step closer, his boots echoing against the floor. "Come on, don't be shy. You've got to earn your seat at this table, right?" He smirked, then added, "Tell you what, let's make it fair. Show us some of those fancy SEAL reflexes they talk about. Or maybe those were just publicity tricks?" A few uneasy chuckles rippled through the room. Harris wasn't there tonight. The commander had been called to a briefing. That left the platoon alone, unchecked. And Cole, emboldened, was enjoying his audience. Sam pushed her tray forward slightly and stood. The noise dulled instantly. Even laughter hesitated. She stepped out from behind her table, her boots hitting the floor with controlled rhythm. Her expression was unreadable, calm, empty, the kind of quiet that made even the boldest men pause. Cole tilted his head, pretending to stretch. "What's the matter, Lieutenant?" "Didn't mean to." He didn't finish. Because in the blink of an eye, Sam moved. 1 second she was 3 feet away. The next, her hand had gripped his wrist, twisted it down, and swept his legs out from under him in a clean, effortless takedown that slammed him flat onto the floor. The sound echoed across the hall like a rifle crack. Cole's tray clattered down beside him. His breath left his lungs in a sharp grunt. Sam didn't raise her voice. Didn't even breathe hard. Her knee pressed lightly against his arm, pinning him. Her eyes were steady. No anger, no gloating. Just silence. Around them, the mess hall froze. Forks stopped mid-air. Conversations died mid-sentence. Cole tried to move, but she adjusted her grip, subtle, efficient. "Stop," she said quietly. Her tone wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of authority. Of command? of a soldier who'd lived every inch of the pain the title required. She released him after 2 seconds, stood, and brushed imaginary dust from her uniform. Then she reached down, picked up his dropped knife, the one he often toyed with as a habit, and handed it back to him handle first. He stared up at her, red-faced, humiliated, unsure what to say. "Next time," she said, voice calm but firm, "don't test what you don't understand." Then she turned and walked back to her table, lifted her tray, and left the mess hall. Not a single word followed her. For several seconds, no one moved. The sound of the air conditioning unit was suddenly the loudest thing in the room. Cole sat on the floor, staring at the ground, his pride shattered into 100 unspoken pieces. The men who'd laughed seconds ago now avoided eye contact. Even the cook, halfway through wiping a counter, had stopped mid-motion. The silence was suffocating. Finally, one of the younger SEALs muttered, "Holy hell." Another whispered, "Did you see how fast she moved?" Cole stood slowly, his jaw clenched, his knuckles white. He wanted to shout, to curse, to reassert control, but the moment was gone. And worse, deep inside, he knew she hadn't done it out of anger. She'd done it with discipline. That's what stung most. Sam walked through the corridor outside, her footsteps echoing softly against the concrete. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the hum of the bass filled the night air. Her pulse was steady again, her breathing calm. She hadn't planned to act, but reflexes didn't ask for permission. They simply did what they were trained to do. As she reached her quarters, she paused. Through the open door, she could hear faint whispers from the mess hall behind her. Shocked voices, lowered tones. They were talking about her now, but not like before. She sat down on her bunk, unzipped her boots, and exhaled. For the first time since she'd arrived at Coronado, the silence felt different. Heavier, yes, but no longer hostile. She'd drawn a line in that mess hall. A line between mockery and respect. And every man in that room had seen it. Hours later, Commander Harris received a brief call from the mess hall attendant, something about an incident. By the time he arrived, the place was quiet, spotless, and empty. Only Cole remained, cleaning his tray alone, face blank. Harris didn't ask. He didn't need to. He knew the tone of a changed room when he heard it. He found Sam outside near the docks again, sitting on the bench overlooking the black water. "Rough night?" he asked, standing beside her. She didn't look up. "Handled itself, sir." He nodded. "I'm sure it did." Then, after a pause, "Just remember, you're not here to win fights, Lieutenant. You're here to win trust." She finally turned to him, her eyes calm but sharp. "Sometimes, sir, trust needs a little proof." Harris's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, not quite disapproval. "Don't make a habit of it," he said quietly. "But good work." He walked away, leaving her alone with the sound of the waves and the faint hum of the night. Sam looked up at the stars, the reflection dancing across her eyes. She knew this wasn't over. Respect in the SEALs wasn't given once. It was earned every day through sweat, scars, and silence. But tonight, at least, she'd made her point. And for the first time since stepping onto the base, she didn't feel like a guest in someone else's world. She felt like she belonged. Morning arrived with the sharp blare of the base siren. The California sun burned through the mist rolling off the ocean, painting the sky in silver and gold. The air was thick with salt, sweat, and routine, the kind of morning that separated the strong from the survivors. Lieutenant Samantha Porter was already awake before the alarm. Sleep had been shallow, interrupted by flashes of last night, the mocking voices, the takedown, the silence that followed. She didn't regret it, not for a second. But she also knew what it meant. Her every move from now on would be watched. Her reflection in the mirror was calm but unreadable. She tied her hair back into a tight bun, the same ritual she'd done since Budness. Every motion carried purpose. Every line of her uniform was sharp. The world could doubt her, mock her, test her, but she refused to give it the satisfaction of seeing her shaken. When she stepped outside, the base was already alive with movement. SEALs jogged across the field in formation, instructors barked orders, and the sound of boots striking concrete echoed like a heartbeat. Sam fell into the morning rhythm, a 5-mile run followed by combat conditioning drills. The same routine, but the air around her felt different. Eyes followed her now, not with mockery, but with quiet curiosity. Respect wasn't granted overnight, but something had changed since the mess hall. Even Ryan Cole, who had been loudest the night before, kept his distance. His swagger was gone, replaced by something she hadn't seen before, thoughtfulness, or perhaps confusion. Commander Harris had called for a team briefing at 09:00 hours. It was supposed to be routine, mission planning, logistics, training updates, but everyone knew the air would be thick. The SEALs prided themselves on unspoken order, and last night had disturbed that balance. When the team assembled, the tension was palpable. Harris stood at the front, arms folded, his eyes sweeping across the room. Sam stood near the back, silent, hands clasped behind her back. Harris didn't start with the agenda. Instead, he said, "Heard there was an incident in the mess hall last night?" No one spoke. The room was still. He looked around, his tone dry but edged. "Anything I should be aware of?" Cole shifted in his seat, but didn't raise his head. Sam said nothing. After a long pause, Harris gave a small nod. "Good. Then I'll assume it's handled." He let the silence hang for another beat. "For the record, I don't care what happened. What I care about is that you all remember where you are. This isn't high school. You're SEALs, or at least you're supposed to be." His gaze lingered briefly on Cole, then moved to Sam. "We're heading into something real next week. No more proving yourselves to each other. Prove it out there." The message was clear. Harris moved on to the operation briefing, a joint coastal simulation with the Coast Guard. It would test coordination, stealth, and underwater demolition timing, everything SEALs were built for. Sam listened closely, taking notes, her mind already mapping the plan. She wasn't just trying to do well. She needed to be perfect. When the meeting ended, the men filed out silently. Cole lingered behind for a moment, glancing at Sam as if wanting to say something, but the words never came. The next few days became a blur of drills and strategy. Every hour was a test: endurance, precision, composure. During one underwater demolition drill, Sam partnered with Petty Officer Malik Torres, a quiet but respected operator who'd been in Afghanistan. Unlike most, he didn't treat her like a novelty. He treated her like a teammate. "You breathe steady," he said through his regulator, eyes locking on hers as they synchronized their descent. "That's good. Means your head's in it." She gave a short nod through the murky water. The mission was simple. Attach a practice charge to the hull of a decommissioned vessel, surface undetected, and report. But the currents were strong, and visibility was near zero. Halfway through, Tori's strap snagged on a piece of rebar jutting from the hull. He tugged, but it held firm. His air bubbles quickened. Sam reacted instantly. With deliberate calm, she swam back, unclipped her own tether, and reached for his strap. Her gloved fingers worked fast under pressure, cutting through the line with her dive knife. She secured his stability, signaled an okay, then resumed their mission as if nothing had happened. When they resurfaced, Torres yanked off his mask, coughing seawater, and stared at her. "You just saved my ass." Sam shrugged slightly. "We're a team, right?" He grinned, shaking his head. "You've got more steel in you than half the men here." Word spread fast, not because she bragged, but because Torres did. Soon, even the doubters began to see her differently. That evening, while others hit the gym or the local bar, Sam stayed by the dock again. The ocean was calm, waves lapping softly against the wood. She liked it there, the quiet, the distance. It reminded her of why she'd chosen this path in the first place. To her surprise, someone joined her. It was Cole. He stood awkwardly at first, hands in his pockets. The cocky grin he always wore was gone. "Mind if I sit?" he asked. She glanced at him, then nodded toward the bench beside her. For a while, neither spoke. The sound of seagulls and wind filled the space between them. Finally, Cole exhaled. "I owe you an apology." She didn't respond right away. "I was out of line," he continued. "You didn't deserve that crap." "None of it." Sam turned her head slightly, studying him. His eyes weren't defensive this time. They were steady, honest. "You were testing me," she said. He nodded. "Yeah. I thought you were here because someone upstairs wanted to make headlines. I was wrong. You earned it." She didn't say thank you, not out of pride, but because respect wasn't something to collect like a trophy. It had to be lived, day after day. After a pause, she said, "You weren't the first to doubt me, Cole. Probably won't be the last. But out there, when things go wrong, the ocean doesn't care who you are, only how well you fight." He gave a small, humbled smile. Fair enough. For the first time, the tension between them eased. Not gone, but softened, replaced by a cautious respect born of shared understanding. As the sun sank into the horizon, painting the sky orange and violet, Cole finally stood. "See you in the sim tomorrow, Lieutenant." "Don't be late," she replied without looking at him. He chuckled. "Wouldn't dream of it." Later that night, Harris stood by his office window, looking out at the field below. From the second floor, he could see Sam training alone under the floodlights, pushing herself through extra sprints and dry fire drills. He shook his head slightly, not in disapproval, but in admiration. Chief Petty Officer Daniels, his second in command, stepped into the office. "She's still out there?" "Doesn't stop," Harris said quietly. Daniels nodded. "You think the team's coming around?" Harris watched her steady form moving across the track, the rhythm of her discipline cutting through the night. "They will," he said. "Men respect strength, but what lasts isn't strength, it's consistency. She's got both." Daniels grinned. "She might just out-seal the SEALs?" Harris didn't smile, but his tone softened. "That's what scares them. And that's what'll change them." Back on the track, Sam finished her last lap, chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. She looked toward the horizon, the distant lights of the ocean base, glowing faintly through the mist. For the first time since she'd arrived, she didn't feel like she was surviving the environment. She was shaping it. The tides were shifting, and soon the whole unit would know that when Samantha Porter moved, the mission followed. The ocean was restless that night, dark waves colliding against the steel hull of the training vessel. The mission was meant to be a simulation, a controlled joint exercise with the Coast Guard, but every SEAL in the platoon knew that simulation was just military language for real stress without the bullets. Lieutenant Samantha Porter stood at the briefing table, arms crossed, eyes locked on the map. The objective was straightforward on paper. Infiltrate a decommissioned oil platform 5 nautical miles offshore. Neutralize simulated hostiles and extract a hostage. But simplicity was an illusion between the unpredictable weather, the strong currents, and the new equipment protocols. A dozen things could go wrong. And with Harris watching, nothing less than perfect execution would do. Cole stood beside her, reviewing the schematic. For the first time since that night in the mess hall, His tone was all business. If we insert from the north side, we'll hit open waterbed visibility, but better cover. Sam nodded. Agreed. We'll have 10 minutes to get inside before the next patrol sweep. The Coast Guard radar will be live, so we'll need full stealth until extraction. Harris entered the room, silent as always. You two ready? He asked. Cole straightened. Yes, sir. Sam's response was calm but firm. Ready, Commander. Harris studied her for a moment, then said quietly, This isn't about the platform. It's about the team. Show me that you can move as one. Yes, sir, they answered in unison. By 0200 hours, the black rubber craft sliced across the waves. The moon hung low, half veiled by clouds, the wind biting through their wetsuits. Every sound mattered out here. The rhythmic thump of the engine, the hiss of the sea, it all merged into the pulse of the mission. Sam sat at the front, scanning the horizon through her night vision goggles. Her heart wasn't racing. It was steady, trained. Adrenaline wasn't her enemy. It was her ally. Cole signaled from behind. 2 minutes to target. She nodded and raised a clenched fist. The team cut the engines, letting the raft drift the last 100 yards. The sound of crashing water against the oil platform grew louder, echoing like a mechanical heartbeat in the night. One by one, the seals slipped into the water. Sam followed, the cold biting instantly, but her mind tuning it out. Her body moved on instinct years of drills, condensed into muscle memory. They ascended the platform's support beams, climbing silently, hands gripping wet steel. Every motion synchronized, every breath timed. When they reached the first deck, Torres moved to breach the access door with a controlled pry. Sam covered the corner, her MP5 raised, scanning for movement. The only sound was the wind howling through broken vents. Torres nodded. Clear. They moved in. Inside, the corridors were narrow and pitch black, the floor slick with saltwater residue. The simulation hostile's Coast Guard specialists, playing the role, would be hiding in ambush positions. Cole whispered through comms, Porter, you take point. Copy. She moved forward, her flashlight off, trusting her spatial sense and training. Each step was precise. Every creak of metal told her a story. Then movement. A flicker in her periphery. A shadow lunged from behind the container. Before the attacker could shout, Sam pivoted, sweeping his weapon aside and pinning him with a disarm that dropped him flat in a single controlled motion. The team froze. Torres muttered under his breath. Damn! Cole's voice crackled in her ear. Confirmed, neutralized, move. They advanced deeper into the structure. Halfway through the operation, things began to go wrong. A sudden storm swept in from the west, the wind howling, waves smashing against the platform. The structure shook. Communications with the Coast Guard went static. Harris's voice on the radio cut out mid-sentence. Cole cursed quietly. We lost signal. Sam checked her wrist, display no uplink. The radar feed was gone. They were blind. Switch to manual comms, she ordered. We finish the op and extract on schedule. Cole hesitated. We're flying dark, Porter. We should pull back until... She cut him off. Negative. We adapt. The storm's our cover now. We complete the mission. There was no arrogance in her tone, only certainty. Cole studied her face for a second, then nodded. You heard her. Move out. They reached the main control room target location. The hostage dummy was tied to a chair in the center, surrounded by metal crates. Sam moved forward to secure it. Then the floor beneath them shuddered violently. A wave had slammed the base of the platform, sending a tremor through the structure. Torres stumbled, his boot catching on a pipe. The steel beneath him gave way with a metallic crack. He fell. Torres. Cole shouted, diving forward. Sam was faster. Without hesitation, she dropped her rifle, lunged, and caught his arm just as he slipped through the gap. The ocean roared below, black and merciless. Her gloves tore against the jagged edge of the metal, but she didn't let go. Torres kicked, trying to find footing. Go. I'm fine, just go. Not happening, she hissed through gritted teeth. Cole grabbed hold of her vest, helping stabilize her as the storm intensified. Rain slammed against the walls, thunder booming so loud it felt like artillery fire. Pull him up, she commanded. Together, they heaved. Inch by inch, Torres rose, water streaming off him as he cleared the ledge. The moment his boots hit the deck again, Sam collapsed backward, breathing hard. Cole leaned beside her, panting. You're insane, Porter. She smirked, wiping rain from her face. You're welcome. Torres, gasping, managed a grin. You're not human, Mom. She looked at him, her tone sharp but warm. Don't call me ma'am. We're teammates. Cole looked at her for a long second before nodding. We finish this together. When they finally reached the extraction point, soaked to bone and bruised from the climb, the Coast Guard chopper appeared through the rain, its spotlight slicing through the dark. The team boarded one by one, Sam last as always. As the helicopter lifted off, she looked down at the heaving ocean below, the same sea that had nearly claimed one of them. Cole's voice came through the headset. You know, for a training mission, that felt a lot like the real thing. Sam looked out the window, her expression calm. That's because real doesn't wait for permission. Cole chuckled softly. Guess you were right. Back at base, drenched and exhausted, the team gathered in the hangar. Harris waited, hands clasped behind his back, expression unreadable. You lost comms, missed extraction by 4 minutes, and nearly got a man overboard, he began. Cole tensed. Then Harris continued, his voice softening. And still managed to finish the mission with 0 casualties, under storm conditions, and complete stealth. That's what I call adaptability. The men relaxed slightly. Harris turned to Sam. You took command when protocol said retreat. Why? She met his eyes. Because, sir, retreating teaches fear. Completing the mission teaches trust. Harris stared at her for a moment, then nodded slowly. Trust. That's the word, Lieutenant. He looked at the rest of the team. Learn from her. As Harris left, silence lingered in the room. Then Torres stepped forward, raising a hand. To the storm that didn't break us, he said with a grin. Cole smirked. And to the woman who led us through it. Laughter broke out, light and genuine this time. Sam smiled faintly, her gaze distant. The storm had tested more than her reflexes. It had tested her place among them. And this time, she hadn't just earned respect. She'd earned belonging. That night, long after the base went quiet, Sam returned to the dock again. The ocean was calmer now, reflecting the stars like shards of silver. She sat on the same bench as before, her soaked uniform replaced by a simple jacket. The mission was over, but her path was only beginning. The water whispered around her boots. She thought of the men she'd trained with, the battles ahead, the invisible lines she'd crossed to get here. For the first time, she didn't feel like she was standing alone against the current. The current, it seemed, was beginning to move with her. 3 weeks later, the call came. It wasn't another training simulation. It wasn't a scheduled exercise or a test of endurance. This time, it was real, an active operation classified under urgent deployment. The team had been handpicked for a covert extraction in the Horn of Africa, where a group of American aid workers had been captured by a coastal militia. The situation was volatile. No negotiation, no time for politics. The mission: get in, get them out, disappear. Commander Harris gathered the unit in the dimly lit operations room. The projector displayed satellite images of the target zone, a crude fishing compound reinforced with stolen military hardware. Armed guards, improvised defenses, and unpredictable local fighters. "This isn't an exercise," Harris began, his tone like iron. "Intel says the hostages are alive, but that window is closing fast. We'll deploy from the USS Wainwright under cover of night. Insertion via subsurface. Exfil by air once we've cleared the coast." He paused, letting the gravity settle. "You've trained for this. You've proven yourselves. But out there are no second chances. Lieutenant Porter, you'll lead infiltration." All eyes turned to her. Sam stood steady, hands clasped behind her back. "Understood, sir." Cole nodded at her across the table, a silent confirmation that the trust built through sweat and storm was now solid. "Gear up," Harris said. "We launch at 0200. By the time they boarded the helicopter, the world below had already turned black. The sea was endless and moonless, only the rhythmic thrum of the rotors cutting through the darkness. Sam sat in silence, checking her weapon, her mind locked into the rhythm of procedure: load, secure, breathe. She could feel the weight of it. This was the moment every SEAL either earned their truth or drowned beneath it. Across from her, Torres gave a half-grin. "You ready, Lieutenant?" Sam adjusted her headset. "Always." Cole leaned forward. "No speeches tonight?" She smirked slightly. "We'll talk after everyone's breathing on the bird back home." "Fair enough." The red light inside the chopper flickered. 30 seconds. They moved fast, rope descent into cold water, rebreathers in place, weapons sealed. The shock of the ocean hit like a slap, but no one hesitated. The SEALs swam silently toward the shore, the outline of the fishing compound growing clearer against the faint horizon. The mission had begun. They reached the coastline under pitch black, waves crashing softly against the rocks. The compound sat 30 meters inland, wooden huts reinforced with sheet metal, a radio tower blinking faintly in the distance. Sam signaled the approach. 2 men covered the perimeter, while she and Cole moved in to breach the first structure. The air was thick with smoke and the faint stench of diesel. Somewhere in the distance, a generator hummed. Cole whispered, "Thermals show 2 guards by the front gate." Sam nodded. "We take them quietly. No alarms." They moved in unison. Sam's silencer spat once, a clean headshot. Cole followed with a chokehold on the second guard, lowering the body silently into the dirt. "Gates clear," she whispered. They slipped inside. The compound was a maze of dimly lit corridors, flickering bulbs, and distant voices. Every footstep felt amplified. They could hear muffled shouting in another language. The guards, restless, unaware that death had already entered their camp. Then came the signal from Torres on comms. Visual on the hostages. Main hut, north side. 3 confirmed. "No tangos in sight yet?" "Copy," Sam said. "We're moving." They reached the north side within minutes, hugging the shadows. Inside the hut, faint candlelight flickered through broken slats in the wall. Sam peered through the gap. 3 civilians, bound and terrified, guarded by 2 armed men playing cards at a table. She raised 2 fingers. Cole nodded. "On my mark." She mouthed the countdown. 3, 2, 1. They burst through the doorway, weapons raised. 2 suppressed shots, precise, final. The guards dropped before they even looked up. "U.S. Navy," Sam said sharply, cutting the hostages free. "You're safe. Follow my lead." The oldest man, a gray-haired medic, clutched her sleeve. tears in his eyes. "We thought—" "No time," she interrupted. "We're moving." But as they turned to leave, the compound erupted. Gunfire tore through the walls, deafening bursts of K-rounds. Someone had spotted them. Cole shouted, "Contact!" "East side." Sam pushed the civilians behind a stack of barrels, returning fire in controlled bursts. The rest of the team closed in from the flank, their rifles lighting up the dark. The air filled with chaos, muzzle flashes, shouted commands, the metallic ring of shell casings hitting the ground. Torres' voice crackled through the headset, strained. "We've got movement on the tower. Sniper, top right." Sam swung her scope up. Through the rain of bullets, she caught the faint glint of a rifle scope. "Breathe. Focus. One shot." The glint vanished. "Sniper down," she confirmed. Cole reloaded beside her. "We're boxed in, Porter. We need a route out." Sam scanned the compound, her mind calculating angles and cover. Then she saw it, the old drainage trench cutting through the north fence line. "There," she pointed. "We'll move the hostages through that trench. It leads straight to the extraction point." Cole's voice was sharp. "It's flooded. Better wet than dead. Move." Under covering fire, the team pushed forward. Sam took point, guiding the civilians through knee-deep water as bullets hissed overhead. The world was noise and motion, shouting, the pounding of boots, the metallic tongue of blood and seawater. Cole and Torres covered the rear, returning fire as the last of the militia broke from their barracks. "Go! Go!" Cole yelled, pulling the final hostage through the trench. Sam turned back once, catching sight of a fighter aiming directly at Cole. Without thinking, she moved. The shot rang out loud, sharp. Cole ducked, the bullet missing by inches. Sam's own round struck the gunman clean through the chest. For a split second, Cole stared at her, shock flashing into respect, then something deeper. "Don't ever freeze," she said, voice cold but steady. "Noted," he breathed, firing another burst. They emerged from the trench, soaked, bleeding, but alive. The extraction team was waiting. Two Black Hawks hovering low over the coast, rotor wash whipping sand into a storm. Torres waved a signal flare. "Birds are here. Let's move." One by one, they loaded the hostages. Sam climbed aboard last, pulling herself into the chopper as it lifted off. The ground below erupted in gunfire, but they were already gone, climbing into the clouds to mission complete. Inside the helicopter, the hostages huddled in relief. The SEALs sat silent, catching their breath. Cole leaned over, shouting over the roar of the rotors. "You just pulled off a miracle, Porter." Sam stared out the window, watching the coastline shrink behind them. "We did," she corrected softly. When they landed back on the Wainwright, Harris was waiting. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes betrayed pride. "Outstanding work," he said quietly. "0 losses. Full extraction. That's how it's done." He paused, then looked directly at Sam. "You led them well." She stood at attention, rain still dripping from her gear. "Thank you, sir." As Harris walked away, Cole approached her, helmet tucked under his arm. "I think the mess hall's gonna have a new story tonight," he said with a grin. Sam smiled faintly. "As long as they don't make it about me." He laughed. "Too late for that, Lieutenant." That night, as the ship cut through the waves under a pale moon, Sam stood alone on the deck. The air smelled of salt and fuel, the wind cool against her face. She closed her eyes, feeling the hum of the engines beneath her feet, steady, alive. The mission had changed everything. The mockery was gone. The doubts erased. In the eyes of her brothers in arms, she was no longer the woman who made it through Bud S. She was simply a SEAL, and that she knew, was all she had ever wanted to be. 3 months after the Horn of Africa mission, Lieutenant Samantha Porter's name had become something of a whispered legend among the ranks. The mess hall stories had changed, no longer mockery or disbelief, but a quiet, lingering respect. Still, Sam didn't bask in it. Respect was a fragile thing in the teams. One mistake, and it vanished like mist. She knew it. That's why she spent every spare hour training harder, running drills long after the others had hit the racks. She had learned that heroism wasn't a moment. It was maintenance. Then one morning, while the ship was anchored off the coast of Oman, Commander Harris summoned her to the operations room. His tone over comms had been sharp, clipped. When she entered, the mood was different. Darker. Cole, Torres, and the rest of the unit were already there, eyes fixed on a satellite feed projected on the wall. Harris didn't waste time. "We've been handed a ghost mission," he said, his voice low. "No paperwork, no official acknowledgement. Washington wants no connection to this." He clicked to the next slide, a grainy image of a convoy deep in the desert. 2 days ago, an American intelligence operative, codenamed Raven, was captured by a rogue faction in Yemen. He holds critical data. If that data leaks, entire U.S. operations across the region could collapse. Cole frowned. "So we're going to get him out?" "Exactly. But this one's different. No flags, no uniforms, no proof we were ever there. If anything goes wrong, you're on your own." A murmur spread through the team. Harris's eyes met Sam's. "Porter, you're leading again. You've proven you can handle chaos. But understand, this mission can't go public. No extraction backup, no air support." Sam nodded. "Understood, sir." "Good," Harris said. "Because this is not just a rescue. You're retrieving the drive he was carrying. Priority 1 is the data. Priority 2. Raven." Torres raised an eyebrow. "Sir, are you saying the intel comes before the man?" Harris didn't blink. "That's exactly what I'm saying." The silence that followed was heavy, a kind of moral weight everyone in that room could feel pressing down. That night, under the cover of silence, the team boarded a small cargo plane retrofitted for stealth. The desert stretched endlessly beneath them, a sea of shifting gold and black. Sam sat in the back, reviewing the maps illuminated on her tablet. Cole leaned in beside her. "Doesn't sit right, does it?" He said, "What?" "Being told to save the data before the man." Sam didn't answer immediately. "Orders are orders." He gave a faint smirk. "That's not what you really think." She met his gaze, steady, unreadable. "I think if we start picking which orders to follow, people die." He nodded slowly, leaning back. "Maybe. Or maybe following the wrong ones gets them killed too." She didn't respond, but his words stayed with her. They landed 50 miles from the target, a canyon network where the rogue faction had fortified their camp. Drones confirmed multiple hostiles, a dozen vehicles, and what looked like an underground bunker. The heat was suffocating. Even at night, the desert air shimmered with heat waves. "Approach on foot," Sam whispered through her mic. Low visibility, no contact until visual confirmation of the hostage. They moved silently through the canyons, each step measured, weapons raised. The sand muffled their movements, ghosts moving through the bones of the earth. As they neared the camp, a faint glow of firelight flickered against the canyon walls. Voices carried through the still air. Laughter, shouting, the clatter of metal. Cole raised his binoculars. Got visual. Hostage in the tent, southeast side. 2 guards outside, maybe more inside. Sam nodded. Torres, cover East Ridge. Cole, you're with me. They crept closer, hearts thudding with that familiar blend of fear and focus. One guard stepped away to light a cigarette, The perfect opening. Cole took him down with a silenced shot. The second never had time to turn. They entered the tent. Inside, a man was tied to a chair, head slumped forward, blood caked along his face. When he looked up, his eyes were sharp, calculating. "Raven?" Sam whispered. He nodded weakly. "You're late. Your data drive. Where is it?" She asked, scanning the room. He glanced toward a small crate by the table. "In there. But they know it's valuable. Their leader plans to sell it at dawn." Sam moved to retrieve it, but before her hand reached the box, the tent flap burst open. 3 men stormed in. Gunfire ripped through the silence. Sam dove behind the chair, returning fire. Cole took out one, then another, but a round tore across his shoulder. He grunted in pain. "Go," he shouted. "Get the drive." Sam grabbed it and yanked Raven to his feet. "Move!" They sprinted out of the tent, alarms echoing through the canyon. Searchlights ignited. Shouts erupted in Arabic. Torres' voice cracked through coms. "You've been burned." 50+ hostiles converging. "Fall back to Point Echo." Sam yelled. The night exploded into chaos. They ducked into a narrow gorge, bullets sparking off the rock. Cole was bleeding heavily, clutching his shoulder. "Leave me," he said through gritted teeth. "Not happening," Sam snapped. Torres arrived moments later, dragging a bag of charges. "We can seal the canyon. Buy us time." "Do it," Sam ordered. Torres planted the explosives as Raven leaned heavily against a rock, gasping. "They'll kill all of you for this," he muttered. Sam ignored him. "You still have that data?" He hesitated. "It's encrypted. Without me, it's useless." She turned to him, eyes narrowing. "Then we're not leaving without you." The canyon shook as the charges detonated, rocks collapsing behind them. Dust filled the air, cutting visibility to nothing. They ran, half-blind, lungs burning, every step a fight against exhaustion. When they finally reached the extraction ridge, the drone feed showed more enemy movement approaching fast. "Too many," Torres said, panting. "We won't hold them off." Cole's voice was weak but resolute. "We don't have to. We just need one clean window for a vac." Sam activated the beacon flare. "Air support. This is Alpha Team requesting emergency extraction. Grid 5-2. Static." Then, "Negative Alpha. You're blacklisted. No air support authorized." Her stomach dropped. Harris hadn't been exaggerating. They really were on their own. Cole stared at her. "So what now?" Sam exhaled, scanning the horizon. Then she saw it, a narrow rock formation that curved downward like a natural ramp leading to the lower valley. "We make our own extraction," she said. "Through there." They half-carried, half-dragged Raven down the slope, bullets chasing them the whole way. The sound of gunfire echoed off the cliffs like thunder. When they reached the valley floor, the first streaks of dawn painted the sand red. Ahead, a small wadi, a dry riverbed that could hide them from thermal scans. They collapsed behind a ridge, breathless, battered. Raven looked at her, incredulous. "You could have left me." Sam glared back. "That's not how this team works." He stared at her for a long moment, then slowly nodded. Hours later, they reached the border checkpoint. Unofficial, unmanned, and quiet. A local contact met them there, a smuggler working under U.S. intelligence cover. He took one look at their state and said, "You weren't supposed to make it out." "Neither were we," Cole muttered. The smuggler smirked, handing Sam a radio. "Washington wants to talk to you." She lifted it to her ear. "Porter here." The voice on the other end was cold, detached. "Lieutenant Porter, you've retrieved the package?" "Yes, sir." "And the operative?" Alive. A pause. That wasn't the directive. Sam's jaw clenched. With respect, sir, directives don't mean much when men's lives are on the line. Silence. Then the line went dead. Cole chuckled bitterly. Guess that's one way to get fired. Sam slipped the drive into her vest. Let them try. That night, as they crossed into friendly territory, the desert winds howled like ghosts behind them. Cole's arm was bandaged, Torres limped, Raven barely stood. But they were alive. Sam looked back once at the horizon, endless dunes glowing under the moonlight. For the first time in months, she let herself breathe. War didn't give heroes. It gave survivors. And tonight, they were both. The return to base was quiet. Not the calm of victory, but the uneasy hush that follows a storm. The kind that precedes judgment. Lieutenant Samantha Porter sat in the back of the transport van, the data drive secured in her vest, and the weight of 3 months of missions pressing down on her shoulders. Cole and Torres sat nearby, their injuries bandaged, their silence heavy with exhaustion and relief. Raven, once stoic, now leaned against the wall, eyes hollow from captivity. He was alive, yes, but the ordeal had left him fractured, and Sam felt the full measure of responsibility. Every life saved, every decision she made, weighed on her like the tide pulling at her boots. Commander Harris was waiting in the operations room. The base was eerily empty, most personnel still asleep after their return, leaving the 4 of them in a room that smelled faintly of coffee and antiseptic. Harris's face was unreadable, the mask of a man who carried too many secrets to show his emotions. Lieutenant Porter, he began, voice measured, the Horn of Africa mission. Flawless execution. Operation Tempest. Exceptional. Yemen. Unprecedented. He paused, eyes locking on her. And yet, I suspect you understand the situation you've created. Sam straightened. Yes, sir. I understand. I followed my team, my judgment, and the mission objectives. Lives were saved. The data retrieved. Harris's gaze didn't soften. Correct. And yet you defied direct orders. You acted outside the chain of command. You risked international exposure and political fallout. In any other circumstance. His voice trailed off. She nodded. I understand, sir. He took a deep breath, then exhaled slowly. Yet, I cannot fault the outcome. You chose the path of courage over compliance, and that, Lieutenant, is the essence of leadership. Cole let out a quiet whistle behind her. Torres raised an eyebrow, a smirk tugging at his lips, while Raven merely stared, comprehension slowly dawning in his tired eyes. Harris continued, You've earned the respect of your peers and the operational trust of this command. But the consequences, political and procedural, will follow. Expect debriefs, investigations, and scrutiny. Sam's jaw tightened. I understand, sir. I'm prepared to accept responsibility. Good, Harris said, a hint of relief in his tone. But make no mistake, you've set a precedent. The men will follow you, willingly or not. That is both your gift and your burden. He gestured toward the team. Cole, Torres, Raven, recover. Lieutenant Porter, report to me in 1 hour. We have decisions to make. Sam walked outside, the chill of the early morning air brushing against her face. The horizon was streaked with pale orange and pink as the sun began its slow climb. She could hear the distant hum of the base coming alive, a reminder that life moved forward regardless of the battles fought in silence. Cole fell into step beside her. You realize they're going to make an example out of you? Probably, she replied, eyes on the horizon. Doesn't change what I did. He shrugged, a wry grin forming. You're insane, you know that? I prefer the term decisive, she said lightly, though the tension in her shoulders betrayed her fatigue. Decisive? You just defied Washington, Porter. Yeah, insanity sounds right. She laughed quietly, a brief release of tension. They'll respect it after they see the results. It's always easier to judge from a distance. Cole nodded, falling silent as they walked toward the medical bay where Torres was being treated. The debriefing was brutal. Every detail of the Yemen operation was scrutinized. Timing, decision-making, exit strategies, collateral damage assessments. Sam answered each question with precision, recounting the storm of gunfire, the moral calculus, the extraction logistics, without hesitation. The senior officials were visibly unsettled, their questions sharp, their disbelief palpable. How did you justify leaving the chain of command? One officer demanded. I assessed the situation and prioritized the preservation of life and the mission objective, Sam replied calmly. Following orders would have compromised both. I made a judgment call. Another officer leaned forward. You endangered international relations. You acted unilaterally. I acted decisively, Sam said evenly. Lives were saved, intelligence secured. Sometimes protocol cannot account for the fluid nature of conflict. The room fell silent. No one argued further. Her words carried the weight of experience, tempered by action, validated by results. Weeks passed, and the consequences of her actions rippled outward. Investigations were conducted, interviews completed, and reports filed. Through it all, Sam remained steadfast, unshaken by political scrutiny or whispers in the corridors. Her team had rallied around her. Cole, Torres, and Raven became not only allies but champions of her leadership. The SEAL community watched closely, learning that courage often defied protocol, and that leadership sometimes meant taking the unthinkable path. The mess hall, once a theater of mockery, had transformed into a place of quiet acknowledgement. The men no longer laughed at her presence. Instead, subtle nods, respectful glances, and murmured commendations became the norm. Even Ryan Cole, whose skepticism had once bordered on contempt, now stood firmly at her side, a testament to trust earned in the crucible of fire. Months later, Sam stood on the deck of the USS Wainwright, watching the sun dip into the Pacific. The horizon stretched endlessly, a canvas of gold and deep blue. The air smelled of salt and diesel, the hum of the engines beneath her feet steady, alive. She allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. She thought of the storms she had faced, the mess hall ridicule, the brutal training, the night operations in desert sands, and the weight of leadership under fire. Each trial had shaped her, honed her instincts, and demanded her courage. She knew that every mission left a mark, on the men, the country, and herself. Yet she felt a quiet pride. She had led with integrity, decisiveness, and compassion, even when the rules seemed to demand otherwise. Torres approached, carrying a towel and a water bottle. You ever take a day off? He asked, a teasing lilt in his voice. Sam smirked, taking the water. Not until the ocean stops testing me. Cole joined him, bandaging his old shoulder, and nodded toward the horizon. You've changed the dynamic here, Porter. Everyone knows it. She glanced at him. I just did what needed to be done. Raven, standing a few paces behind, added quietly, You didn't just lead us. You made us believe we could follow anyone, anywhere, no matter the risk. Sam looked at them. This team forged through fire and trust. They were her family now, not by blood, but by shared battle and loyalty. She inhaled deeply, letting the wind wash over her. Then let's make sure we honor that trust, she said, because every mission after this one will demand it. The sun finally disappeared below the horizon, leaving a faint glow on the water. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to feel the weight lift, just enough to know that the path ahead, no matter how perilous, would be navigated with the same resolve. courage, and unwavering discipline. She didn't need the accolades, the political approval, or the recognition. She needed only the mission, her team, and the knowledge that when push came to shove, she had the reflexes, instincts, and heart to carry them through. As the USS Wainwright cut through the waves, Lieutenant Samantha Porter stood alone on the deck for a moment longer. The ocean stretched infinite and alive, just as unpredictable as the life she had chosen. And she was ready for whatever came next.